misunderstood one paragraph that Ted Cruz, who is a superb orator, said. And I just want to point it out to you. Ted Cruz said, you can vote your conscience for anyone who will uphold the Constitution. In this election, there is only one candidate who will uphold the Constitution.
Newt Gingrich taking lemons left by Ted Cruz and turning them into lemonade last night at the outset of the Speaker's speech at the Cleveland Convention. Your chance to join us in the conversation at 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-639-7629. And let's commence that conversation as joining us from Convention Hall in Cleveland is former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Newt, we really do appreciate your time. And I just want you to take us back to that moment we saw. How did you set it up? Reflexively go with that, with an unscripted part there to open your speech last night.
Well, I hadn't paid any attention to what Ted Cruz was going to say. The Trump people knew that it was not going to be what they'd hoped for, but they made the decision to allow him to go ahead and speak because they wanted to be generous, they wanted to be open, and I think they were very surprised by the intensity of the booing and the reaction from the delegates. And so they came to me after the booing as Eric Trump began to speak, and they said, you know, we really need to get closure on this issue, or people are going to be talking about it so much they're not going to paying attention either to my speech on national security or, more importantly, to Mike Pence's vice presidential acceptance speech. So he said, would I put in a couple paragraphs to try to get this thing over with and out of the way? So I read exactly what Ted had said. That one paragraph struck me as absolutely clear. I don't think he meant it to be, but if you read the principles that Ted Cruz said mattered, the only person running for president who fits those principles is Donald Trump. I mean, there's no way you could say Hillary Clinton is for the Constitution as we interpret it. She's against the Second Amendment. She would eliminate freedom of religion in the First Amendment. She would do many things that violate the Constitution. So I was pretty confident, if I put it that way, that the delegates would understand I had just taken Ted's rejection and turned it into an acceptance and then let him deal with it. It's his problem. He shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have said it the way he did. It was a very childish, selfish thing to do. When you're invited into somebody's house, and this is Donald Trump's house this week, when you're invited into somebody's house, you don't go in and pour acid on the flowers. You either don't go at all or you show some level of being a good guest.
And let me talk more about that, because this morning in front of the Texas delegation, Cruz doubles down, talking about insults toward his wife and his dad. Now, you and I have been running for elective office. If we chronicled about 1 million little indignities come our way, and sadly target our family as well. It ain't right, but it happens. What about Cruz this morning doubling down on this before his home state delegation?
It's really hard to understand. Cruz prided himself on making virtually every senator mad at him. He prided himself on being a tough guy. He was going to take on the whole system. He ran for president. He ran a very tough campaign. He did some things to Donald Trump that weren't very nice either. He did some things to some other candidates that weren't very nice either. But politics at the presidential level is a very, very tough business. The fact is that there's no excuse for what Ted Cruz did. It tells me he doesn't think about the party. He doesn't think about conservatism. He doesn't think about defeating Hillary. He thinks about Ted Cruz. Well, that's a pretty narrow base for a political philosophy.
And Newt, just to reinforce what you're saying, I think we can share this now. It was a private conversation the day after the election in 1998. You faced a tough fight to remain as Speaker. You called me, asked me for my opinion. I'm not ashamed to say I was broken up to tell you how tough the situation was and how untenable I thought it was. But you sat and you listened to what I have to say, bore no personal animus to me, and there has to be a level. Yes, egos get in the way, but there have to be disappointments, and there has to be an ability to listen. And you have proven that time again. It's just unfortunate for Cruz now. He's in this situation. Is there anything he can do to undo what many are calling political suicide?
I don't know. That's his problem. I can tell you, though, and you know, because you were there, Mitt Romney did a lot of stuff to Calista and me we didn't like. He ran a lot of ads that were totally dishonest. It was a rough and tumble campaign in 12. But when it was over, as a loyal Republican, I volunteered to help Mitt Romney. I endorsed him. I worked at the convention every single day. I campaigned in the fall because I'm a team builder. I'm a party member. I believe that defeating Hillary Clinton is a matter of national survival. I think her foreign policy, her views, her corruption is so dangerous to America that it endangers us losing the country to a radical Supreme Court. It endangers us losing the country to all sorts of corrupt people, including all sorts of Middle Eastern dictatorships and the Russians. And finally, I think it forces us to look very seriously at the whole question of what she would be like in national security terms, where she has been consistently and clearly a disaster. So I start with the idea, I want to know from Ted Cruz, looking at his children, looking at the future, how can he possibly think that that's better to allow her to win than to be for Donald Trump?
And of course, Newt, you outlined it last night. Donald Trump is going to move to that today, but there is another story outside the convention hall, a change at the top of Fox News, the resignation of the CEO, Roger Ailes. What has surprised me is this afternoon, there are reports suggesting that Roger Ailes could replace Paul Manafort atop the Trump campaign. Do you think there's anything to that rumor?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I've been wrapped up here in the convention, so that's beyond my understanding.
All right, well, I tell you what.
Can't comment on that.
Well, let's comment about Trump's speech, because obviously you tried to make the case last night about national security and the necessity to change course. Does Donald Trump double down on the rhetorical path that you set up last night?
Look, I think in the case of Trump, it's very clear that as a businessman who's been outside of politics, he is going to enter national security, he's going to enter diplomacy, he's going to enter trade deals with a whole new attitude, a whole new approach, and he's going to question everything. And I think that's kind of healthy. We've had a national establishment that has had a certain set of views, a certain set of assumptions, has become very bureaucratic, and I think has cut a bunch of very bad deals. So I think to have somebody new really raise fundamental questions is probably very good. And I think Trump in that sense may be exactly what America needs right now.
And we do know, Newt, and we have taken stock of the fact that a lot of people are interested in talking to you. In fact, we've got a call right now at 1-877-NEWSMAX out to my old stomping grounds in Arizona, Black Canyon City to be precise. Gerald is on the line. Hi, Gerald.
How you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
And hi, Newt. I agree with Newt all the way. We need to hear him talk about campaign finance, term limits. Let's fix that system that got us where we're at.
And of course, that whole thing, Newt, the notion of an outsider being a reformer, so many important issues, but what? National security, economic security, border security. Will that be the foundation of the Trump address tonight in your mind?
Well, look, I think first of all, there are issues where Trump is so clear, border security is one of them, that we can be pretty confident that if he wins, that's going to be very, very high on the list of what he's going to do. So I think some of these things he's been so clear on. I think in other areas it's still unfolding, and he's learning and we're learning. But I would also say, in terms of campaign finance, unlike the normal image of a billionaire who goes out and spends so much money that he drowns his opponent, Trump spent about 1/4 as much money as Jeb Bush, and yet he won decisively because he used social media, he used the internet, he used big issues and big ideas. And so he was attracting people at a rate that no traditional campaign could match. That's a huge, I think, achievement.
It is a historic achievement, and it behooves us that a historian pointed it out. Newt Gingrich, we thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your analysis of what's going on. Great to have you on tonight, Newt. Thanks so much.
Great. Take care, JD.
Thank you, sir. Now, when we come back, obviously, more of your phone calls, and we'll take a look at what's going on in Cleveland at the podium as we get ready for Donald Trump, who is expected to offer his acceptance speech tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So lots going on. More of your calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX and more with our guests as our special coverage of the convention continues.